This mouse is insane. It's not just small, it's comically small. It's not just light, it's practically weightless. It doesn't just glide well, it glides like no productivity mouse I've ever touched. And on top of all of that, this thing is loaded with features and starts at just $50. Now, I've long enjoyed Keychron keyboards, and then one day I noticed that they were rolling out a whole bunch of different mice. So I figured I'd give a couple a try. This is the first one that I chose. It's the Keychron M4. When purchasing it, I didn't look too closely at the dimensions. I honestly figured this mouse was about the size of the Logitech MX Anywhere, but boy, was I wrong. Despite having about the same height off the table, it's about 20% smaller, and it weighs 65% less. That's right, 65% less, or put another way, it's just 35% of the weight of the MX Anywhere. This weighs 100 grams, this weighs 35 grams. It's insane. And with a mouse this small, your only option is to use a fingertip grip, which might rule it out immediately for loads of people. However, if you do like controlling your mouse with your fingertips, then I think you're going to particularly love this mouse shape. The way that they contoured the mouse, it just works. If you've ever had a really basic mouse and then you've picked up a slightly more ergonomic shaped mouse, it's kind of like that, but for your fingertips? That's honestly the only way I can think to describe it. You can either choose to be all the way up on your fingertips, maybe if you're gaming or something like that, or you can be a little bit more relaxed and lay your fingers down in line with this steep downward angle. I'm sure this won't work for everyone, but it fits my hand perfectly. When I first unboxed this mouse, I honestly laughed and figured I'd made a mistake. I typically never would have ordered something this small. However, I'm so glad that I did because it's been incredibly fun to use and test. Now, the materials do feel like rather basic plastic. Sadly, no soft touch to be found here. In between the two primary buttons sits a line-by-line scroll wheel. One positive thing I noticed about the scroll wheel, though, is that because it's so tiny in a mouse this small, you can spin it very rapidly with a comparatively small movement. So even though it's not as sophisticated as MagSpeed or Smart Wheels or other things like what's offered by Logitech, you will wind up scrolling at times to get down a big screen, but it does make navigation a little bit easier based on its size. On the side of the mouse, you'll find forward and back buttons. They're a tiny bit mushy feeling, but they do the job. And they're quiet, which I like. The sound of the side buttons are actually a little bit quieter than the primary clicks, which are very traditional sounding. I've got the MX Anywhere 3 here, so this is not the one with silent clicks. We'll do a quick sound comparison between the two. So overall, they're pretty similar. The side buttons are a little quieter on this one, and the scroll wheels are very different. It sounds a lot louder on the MagSpeed when you don't have it plugged in because the magnets aren't really working as they do. That one gets a lot quieter when you're actually in use. But overall, the sound is pretty solid. So the last call out for physical aspects for me comes as a result of sliding the mouse around. Since I typically review productivity mice, I'm not used to fast gliding gaming mice. This mouse, based on the quality of the materials on the bottom as well as the overall weight, glides like nothing I've ever experienced. It's honestly a delight. The only complaint I have with how it glides is that it does seem to glide a little bit unevenly. I'm assuming this is based on a slight imbalance in weighting, but the back will slide a little bit faster than the front of the mouse, which you'll feel. I got used to it, but if you're super sensitive to that type of thing, it might drive you a little bit crazy. Now, outside of the physical design of this mouse, the features that it packs into this tiny little body are impressive. It's got a front-facing USB-C port, which allows it to operate in a fully wired mode. If you choose to go this route, you can use the included USB-C to USB-C cable, which is easily the finest braided cable I've ever received as a computer accessory. It is long, it is light, and it is unbelievably flexible. It's honestly quality to the highest degree. It weirdly feels more like a shoelace to me than a cable, which is to say that it is hella flexible and very nice for use with a mouse. If, on the other hand, you prefer wireless, you can use the single device Bluetooth connection. There's no multi-device here. Or you can connect it via the included USB receiver. This, though, is where things get a little bit complicated. So this mouse comes in two colors. There's a black one that I have here, obviously, and a white. But more importantly, it comes in two versions. This one is the 1000 Hertz version for $50, and there's also a 4000 Hertz version for $70. The difference comes in the USB receiver. My 1000 Hertz version comes with this standard USB-A receiver you've seen on a million other mice. The 4000 Hertz version instead comes with a keyboard-shaped receiver that goes on your desk and gets attached to your computer via the USB cable. So yeah, let's break this down. First of all, when I mention these values, I'm referring to polling rates, also called reporting rate. This is the frequency at which your mouse sends information to your computer. A higher number means more frequent information sent back to your PC. 1000 Hertz means information is sent 1000 times per second. This can result in decreased latency and a higher perceived smoothness when moving your mouse. The driving force behind much of this type of advancement and development in mice recently is gaming, where cutting down every millisecond between when the mouse moves and when the game moves can be the difference between winning and losing. Along that same line, the distance between your mouse and the USB receiver can be another factor slowing things down. That's why Keychron provides an adapter in the box which lets you use your USB receiver as close as possible to your mouse. So we have it right here, and on one side you're gonna have a female USB Type-C, and on the other side a female USB Type-A. So if you take your USB receiver and you plug it into the USB-A side, and then you take that cable from earlier, the idea is that you would plug this into your computer and have this sitting on your desk as close to your mouse as possible. You obviously don't have to do it this way with the standard USB receiver on the 1000 Hertz version, but on the 4000 Hertz version, it has to be plugged into the cable, so you've gotta put it somewhere. Ultimately, in the case of the 1000 Hertz model, I think it looks kind of silly. On the 4000 Hertz model, it also looks silly, but it looks like a silly little keyboard instead. For my lifestyle as a productivity user and infrequent gamer, these features don't mean a whole lot. But for someone who takes games very seriously, the steps to ensure you can get the maximum out of your mice could be a serious input to your purchasing decision. They're also really good practice for Keychron as they're beginning to launch their own new gaming-focused mice under their LemoKey sub-brand. Now, in addition to the high-end polling rate capabilities, on the bottom of the mouse, you have quick access to adjust these values. With a single button and 3 small lights above it, you can switch between 125, 500, and 1000 Hertz on my version. The mouse will default and lock you at 125 Hertz if you're on a Bluetooth connection. If you're on wired or USB receiver mode, you'll default to 1000 Hertz and then have the option to lower it to one of the other two, most notably in an attempt to save battery life. Also on the bottom of your mouse is a button to adjust DPI. Now DPI is dots per inch. It's a measure of the sensitivity of your mouse's sensor. It's got 5 pre-programmed values in this case that go between 400 and 5000 DPI. However, by using the Keychron engine software, you can change these default values and assign them anywhere between the range of 100 and 26,000 to align exactly what you're looking for. If you're somebody that doesn't want to get into the weeds like we're doing here, or worse, if you're concerned about trying to navigate these settings, I assure you it's much simpler than you might think. Just clicking through them one time, you'll pretty quickly find the one that suits your needs and preferences. However, I just ask you to remember that DPI, polling rate, and software settings on both your computer and potentially directly in the video game you're playing all contribute to that very basic concept of when I move my mouse, how quickly does something happen on screen? So consider adjustments to all of those things if you're not landing somewhere that you're happy. And now moving back to the land of mouse concepts that my parents will understand, hi mom and dad, we have batteries. This mouse has a rechargeable 300 milliamp hour battery, which Keychron quotes at 67 hours of use when you've got 1000 Hertz polling being enabled. In testing over the last few weeks, it seems like that estimate is pretty spot on. Overall, this mouse really shocked me. It's somehow both tinier than any mouse I've ever used, while still being excellent for productivity and featured enough to compete even against some of the top tier gaming mice out there. Now, if you're shopping for this as a normal person like me, the 1000 Hz version will likely be plenty for you. In fact, if you needed my explanation for what polling rate means, then probably want to do yourself a favor and just save the $20. If, however, you're a polling rate junkie and you've got a high refresh rate monitor to go with it, the 4000 Hz version is pretty cool and relatively accessibly priced. Please do keep in mind, though, with all Keychron products, you're more than likely going to have to pay a shipping charge on top of the list price. However, even with that, the differentiators here of size and weight, comfort, smooth gliding, high polling rate, DPI customization, and more are tough to pass up in this little thing. Plus, the only potential deal breakers that I could find are that you must enjoy using a fingertip grip, there's no Bluetooth multi-device, and the back seems to slide a little bit quicker than the front. Overall, this mouse is small but mighty, and it's going to be very tough to get it off my desk. Thank you so much for watching this. If you enjoyed the review, how about you hit that subscribe button? And if you want to watch something else, you might enjoy going back to my review of the Keychron K3 V2. It's a low-profile keyboard from Keychron. It's a very solid one at that. I appreciate you as always, and I will see you in the next one.